What's up, YouTube? I'm back. So I said I was going to do the WLMouse BeastX review, and here it is. I'm going to try to keep this short because there's plenty of other reviews out there. This mouse has been out there for a while. So I'll just talk about the salient points, and then if you guys have any questions, you can leave it in the comments. This thing is 39 grams. I have dot skates on here. These are Tiger Ice, but it ships with dot skates as well, but I took the original ones off. I had to open up the mouse for click latency testing and everything else, so I got rid of those. But they advertised 39 grams, and my scale is reading 39.87, 39.89, depending on how you put it on the scale. But yeah, pretty much close enough. So what they advertise is what you get. Let's talk about build quality. So this thing is made out of magnesium alloy, and when you touch it, you can feel the coldness of the alloy. It feels really, really good, actually. And as far as structural stability goes, I can squeeze the hell out of the sides, the top, anywhere. There's no creaking, there's no flex, nothing, and that's expected. This is metal. It's magnesium alloy, and it's probably one of the best feeling mice that I've ever owned, actually. Out of my mice and any other mice that I've used, this thing feels damn good despite the holes. I know they're big holes, and then some people have talked about these side grills right here. I'll be honest with you guys, before I bought this mouse and before it was released, I know people were questioning, what is WLMouse? And is this even the real mouse? Is it legit? And then when they saw these side grills, and I was among the skeptics that said, well, this is probably going to get in the way. It's not going to feel good. Your hands are going to dig in. That's just not true at all. And in fact, it's the opposite. When I use this mouse, my thumb will kind of dig into this hole right here, right? And my third finger right here will dig in here when I'm holding it. And it affords me so good control over this mouse, especially, let's say I'm playing a video game and I want to pull down to control the recoil. I'll just do this with my thumb right inside the groove, and I have perfect control over this. Now, for example, if I compare it to the Tiger is bigger, it has smaller holes, and you don't get that kind of grip with the Tiger. And the Tiger is also longer, so this back part tends to hit my palm when I'm holding it. As you can see here, there's not much play here. So when I'm doing it, see that? You can see there's less play there, right? Whereas with the BeastX, because it's shorter and this is the medium BeastX, you have a lot more room to pull down, and therefore you have a lot more control over it. I know I deviated a little bit talking about the build, but I always get sidetracked, and I thought this is important to mention. But continuing on with the build, yeah, so perfect build quality. I don't see any flaws with this mouse whatsoever. I do want to talk about the buttons next, though. So these buttons are Omron opticals, and I believe they're very similar to the ones found in the Sora V2, except in this WLMouse, they actually feel better. It's probably due to the magnesium. You can spam them really well. Actuation force is not much at all. If I had to guess, it's probably the same as the Sora. And yeah, very low actuation force, feels great. And as far as pre-travel and post-travel, you can see in the video, no discernible pre-travel, post-travel at all. Side buttons equally feel good. No pre-travel, post-travel that I can see at all. Scroll wheel also feels excellent. It's nice and granular. It's made out of plastic. I do wish it was rubber. It's not as good as the Sora V2 scroll wheel, but it still feels good. It is better, however, than the Tiger one. The Tiger one feels kind of cheap, to be honest, especially compared to this or the Sora. It gets the job done, but the BeastX scroll wheel is definitely better than the Tiger. The Tiger is the worst of them all. About the battery life, at 4K, I would say it lasts me about 2 days with 3 hours of continuous use. So it's not very good. But what I tend to do is every time I'm done using it at nighttime, I'll just plug it in and recharge it and be ready for the next day. Or if you have a second mouse, you can always do that. But yeah, at 4K, the battery's not too good. Even at 2K and 1K, it's not exactly great either. So yeah, if you plan to use this over an extended period of time, then either have a second mouse on standby or just get ready to charge it after 3 to 4 hours, maybe 5 hours of continuous use, depending on what you're doing. Gaming, I would say, if you're going to use it in one day continuously, you can probably pull off, I would say, about 5.5 hours, maybe 6 before it runs out on you, but not really more than that. So yeah, battery life is definitely a weak point of this mouse. Next, we're going to talk about the wireless performance of this mouse. So if you look at your screen, the frequency over time graph does not look very good. The pole is all over the place. And unfortunately, this issue is probably not going to get resolved. As far as I know, this mouse is no longer being manufactured. There's a new revision being produced. And the reason is that the relationship that WLMouse supposedly had with the company that designed the firmware for this mouse is no longer a functioning one. They're no longer supporting the mouse. I don't know if that firmware company is even in business anymore. Those are all rumors and hearsay, so I don't know exactly what happened, but I do know that there's a new WLMouse BeastX medium being released. That it does have new firmware. It has a new dongle, looks like a cat paw. This thing is no longer going to be included with the revised version, unfortunately. If you like the Cube, then well, if you didn't get the current version, then you're out of luck. But yeah, so the new one hopefully has improved wireless performance compared to this one, because this one's not too good, at least on paper. Now in practice, that's a whole different thing. But the next graph you're going to look at is the wired performance, and that's how it's supposed to look, and that's with the mouse wired up. I mean, it's not the best either, but it's a marked improvement over wireless. And unfortunately, I don't see a firmware update coming that's going to resolve that. So this mouse will probably be at 4K forever, and it'll never go to 8K. The new revised version will have 8K. Now, some point of good news for this mouse is a click latency. At 1K, it's 0.836 milliseconds. At 4K, it's 0.548 milliseconds. And at 2K, it's 0.523 milliseconds. I don't know why 2K pulled faster than 4K with my click latency test, but that's what XLAT showed, so I'm going to go with it. So that the results themselves, they're very close to the ULX Tiger. In real-world use, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. The motion latency for the BeastX is also very good. Now, compared to the Control, which is Lamzoot Lattice 4K, it gets a minus 0.1 millisecond motion delay. Now, comparatively, the Tiger gets minus 0.5. The Superlight 2 gets minus 0.7 milliseconds. Would you notice a difference between all three of these? Absolutely not. This is purely academic. So the BeastX software is pretty basic. You can reassign a function to a button. So you can put a mouse key, a DPI key, fire key, standard button, multimedia, system function, macro, or office key. In the advanced section, you can set your DPI tiers, and you can also custom set your own DPI. So that's something that's kind of nice that the Tiger doesn't have, or the Sora doesn't have, but the BeastX does. In addition, you can also set your motion sync on or off. There's also a high mode, kind of similar to the competitive mode in the Sora. Essentially, I think it overclocks your sensors where it pulls more often at the cost of battery life, which is already abysmal. So, I mean, I honestly didn't notice much of a difference with high mode on, so I'd probably just keep it off. And then obviously you have slam click prevention, which is nice. The Sora, unfortunately, does not have this. Hopefully they do implement it. LED liftoff distance, 1 or 2 millimeters, just like the Tiger. So if you put on aftermarket skates, then you could switch it. Polling rate can be changed from 125 to 4,006 steppings, so that's also nice. You got a banner indicator at the bottom. You also have a macro screen. You can set up your own macros. Finally, there's a view screen with a dongle. So like I mentioned earlier, you can upload your own custom like animation or picture and replace it, and it'll see, you go to custom menu and you set up your picture or whatever, you set up your upload, and then it'll process it and you'll have it there. Finally, as far as gaming performance goes, I gotta say, you know, like I mentioned earlier in the video, the grip for this mouse, the way your hand fits into the grooves, for me, it feels excellent. And even if you have smaller hands than I do, let's say you have an 18 by 10 hand, or even, I don't know, a 16 by 8 or 9 hand, this mouse will work perfectly for you. It's not, you know, it's not necessarily made for big hands, because as I mentioned before, when I put my hand on the side right here, my thumb, it hits the side button. So people with smaller hands tend to handle this mouse better than I do. But despite all that, this is probably my favorite mouse to use apart from the Tiger for gaming. And I tend to interchange between both of these daily. And I have a tough time figuring out which one is my favorite. Now, I know you're going to say, well, didn't you just say the wireless performance for this was not very good on paper? I did say on paper, because in practice, there's no spin outs. There's no weird behavior that I can see. The tracking is fine. I can flick with this just fine. And before I even got the Tiger, this was my main mouse. And to be honest with you, today, when I was playing Warzone, because of the size of this mouse and how long the Tiger is, I have less room to maneuver this for pull downs, because I do use my my wrist and my fingers to pull down when I'm shooting, instead of pulling down my whole arm. If I use my entire arm, then it wouldn't be an issue, but I don't. And for me, at least gaming wise, this is a little bit better because it's got more room in the back. But again, the tracking is fine, the flicking is fine. You really don't notice anything. There's no spin outs. The Tiger does track better than the BeastX. If you go back to my prior review, you can see the wireless graphs, the frequency over time especially, are really clean for the Tiger, especially compared to this thing. But like I said, in practice, you don't see a huge difference. Yes, the Tiger performs better in game. It performs better with tracking. It performs better with flicks. But is it a huge difference? No, it's not. Especially not the way it looks in those graphs. So yeah, there's definitely a reason that this needs a firmware update. Unfortunately, it probably won't get it. I'm not going to say definitively it won't get it, but from what it looks like right now, it's most likely not going to get it. That's what happens when you buy from a third party, company from China. I mean, either you're going to get some support or you're not going to get any at all. Fortunately for us, WLMouse decided to at least make a revised version of this and switch to a new firmware provider. But you have to buy a new mouse for that, and the new firmware is not going to work on this. So that's too bad for us. Now, as far as balance goes, this mouse is a little bit front heavy. You can see right here as I'm holding it, it kind of tilts forward. And that's because all the electronics are in the front and the battery is just a small battery. So yeah, it's going to be front heavy. Now, the Tiger in comparison, it's very well balanced. The electronics, if you see it in the camera, they're in the middle. They're not really in the front. Whereas the electronics for this, the main board is in the front. And that's why most of the weight's concentrated in the front along with the scroll wheel, so it tilts forward. Does it feel heavier when I'm picking up the mouse and moving around in the game? Yeah, maybe, but it's a 39-gram mouse. You're not gonna really like, oh my god, tilt it and lose control of your mouse. So yeah, the balance, is front heavy, but are you really gonna notice in game? Nah, not really. This thing is perfectly balanced, though. The Tiger is. So yeah, between these two, obviously the BeastX doesn't have the kind of balance that does. And here's the Sora. I mentioned this in my other review too. The Sora is also very perfectly balanced. It doesn't have that issue, but I mentioned this in my Logitech review before, and I stand by what I said. Performance is great, sensors are important, and that's why Tiger's, as far as I know, as far as what I said in my last review, is the best mouse on the market. But, for a lot of people, and this even applies to myself, shape is king. And the Logitech shape, the BeastX shape, which is a derivative of Finalmouse anyway, at this size, they feel excellent. So does this Tiger. It feels excellent. Now, when you bring in the Sora, though, not really. This doesn't feel as good. I'd hate to say it. Neither does the Lamzu. This doesn't feel as good either, shape-wise. I don't know. Just the shape of it just doesn't. I don't like the rear hump. And the same thing with the Sora. I just don't like it. I don't like that rear hump. All three of these mice, however, yeah. They feel good. All of them feel good in your hand. If you like that bar of soap feeling that the Logitech gives, it's unbeatable. Everybody loves this mouse for a reason. And similarly, the WLMouse, if the BeastX, if you're a fingertip user, even if you can't get this mouse anymore, and you can still get the mini if you have smaller hands, or if you're willing to wait or go on AliExpress, you can get the new version of this. I think it's like 159 plus tax. But or if you have the patience, wait for a Finalmouse drop and grab this thing, either the Cheetah, Lion, or the Tiger, whichever fits your hand. Can't go wrong with any of these. But back to the BeastX. Yeah, so it's a great mouse. There's really not much else to say about this. I think I've covered everything. If I missed something, well, sorry. You can probably find the rest of the information at some other review. But I think I'm gonna stop there. There's really not much else to say about this. Gaming performance is excellent. Battery life sucks. The build quality is fantastic. The scroll wheel is decent. The clicks feel excellent. Omron opticals are nice. No pre-travel, no post-travel. And unfortunately, wireless performance could be better. You saw the 4K graphs; they're not the best. I mean, sorry, the frequency over time, not 4K. The 1K frequency over time, it's not the best compared to wired. You saw as at a reference. But what can you do? You can either wait for the new revision, or you can just buy this off a third party. I don't think you can get it at WLMouse's website anymore if you're willing to get this. But this is a great mouse. Now, if I had to give it a rating, I know I gave the Tiger a 9 out of 10. Despite the polling issues of this mouse, I would still have to give it a solid 8 out of 10. And the reason it's not getting a higher score, obviously, is because of the firmware issues and the wireless polling issues. Those are holding this mouse back badly. And now on a personal level, you know, the reason I can't use this as my daily driver is because of these side buttons. Although I did play Warzone again with it today, and I had a fantastic time with it. And yeah, I had a really good time using this for Warzone, and I did well. So yeah, make of it what you will. Well, guys, that'll be it for this review. Thank you for joining me as usual, and I'll see you next time. Take care.